Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to another installment of our Author in Residence series on Own Your Story, How to Pitch to Secure Elite Opportunities. My name is Colin Mahan. I'm the Director of High Growth Impact Entrepreneurs and Head of Sponsorships at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit improving access and knowledge in entrepreneurship to advance economic progress for all. As you're going to see in the chat in just a moment, the Nasdaq Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to help entrepreneurs fuel prosperity, no matter where their journey begins. So be sure to check out those links and resources shared in the chat. Now we're going to launch a few polls to take a temperature gauge on how all of you are doing today. The first poll, how are you feeling about your business? Are you optimistic? Are you in survival mode? Let us know. We use all of this information to guide the programs we provide for this global community of entrepreneurs. So let us know. Also, if there are specific topics or challenges you'd like us to create resources for, feel free to share them in the chat or in our follow-up email survey. So thank you in advance. Looks like optimism is in the lead today. Great to hear it. And then some more housekeeping items before we get started as we're answering these polls. If you are comfortable, let us know where you're dialing in from in the chat. We'd love to see where you're coming from today and see if you have any neighbors. Also, we're going to have live Q&A near the end of this, so please submit those questions for us at any time using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can. Now, while you're answering these final polls, let's see where everyone's coming in from. All right, San Jose, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Dallas. Love to see it. North Carolina, LA, DC. Awesome. Love to see it. Maryland, New York City. All right. Madagascar. Love it. Texas, Florida. A lot of different time zones here. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that everyone can join. And then our final poll, what's keeping you up at night? Again, we use this to drive the next couple months of our programming. So thank you in advance for letting us know where you're coming from and also for what your challenges are. So while you're answering that last couple of things, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the incredible support of our corporate partners. The work we do at the center wouldn't be possible without all the generosity and belief of our partners and funders, including Nasdaq, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, KPMG, Walmart, the Asian Innovation Hub, Wilson Sonsini, the Nareet Foundation, KKR, and BPM. We're deeply grateful for their partnership and hope you'll share us in joining that appreciation as well. All right. Looks like sales is at the top of the key, followed by a good mix of marketing, scale finance. Well, good news is our special guest today, who's not only the amazing Milestone Makers alumni graduate from 2018, but also the author of the book that we're talking about. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest. Dr. Vicki Johnson is the founder and CEO of ProFellow, and of course, as I mentioned, a Milestone Makers graduate. Vicki, so excited to have you.
Colin, thank you so much. This is like coming full circle right now.
We love full circle moments. Well, I'm looking forward to learning more, and over to you.
Thank you. All right, let me share my slides. All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you for coming to this event today. I know with this online world, it's not always great to just get into so many online events, but I have so much to share today. I have a story to share, and this is going to be about how to own your story, how to pitch to secure elite opportunities. And, one of those elite opportunities that I was able to secure was a position in the NASDAQ Milestone Makers program. And I do want to thank the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center for believing in me, choosing me, and allowing me to take part in that because it really did strengthen the trajectory of my business, ProFellow, which is a media platform on fellowships and graduate funding. So it was really a big part of my journey as an entrepreneur. So I really appreciate the resources that the center has to offer, which are numerous. So if you are not fully engaged in the center's resources, definitely I highly recommend it. So let me make sure I can move forward. My full name is Dr. Vicki Johnson. Please feel free to call me Vicki. I'm the founder of ProFellow, which is the leading US media platform on professional fellowships, academic funding, leadership development programs, and even business accelerators. We have a huge free database that you can access that has all sorts of interesting opportunities, many of which have funding attached to them. And if you don't know what a fellowship is, ProFellow is a great place to find out. There's actually quite a few fellowships for entrepreneurs, which means it's funding and resources to support you as a founder or a person who's involved in entrepreneurship. I've also, over the years, I've become an author and a speaker because as I developed this media platform, which was developed in my own experience pursuing fellowships in my early career, I learned that I have a knack at teaching people how to get into these competitive opportunities. So I have a book that's just come out called Pitch Your Potential, which Nicola was very kind to endorse, and because she knows me well and knows the work that I'm doing. I love speaking at different places in corporate, at universities, and even in small group workshops and working with people one-on-one. Now, my early career started in the field of public health and emergency management. I did not start in business. Frankly, I thought I'd be in government nonprofit work for the rest of my life. But markets change, things happen, and I always found these unique opportunities called fellowships that took me all over the world. So when I was working in emergency management early in my career, I went to Germany on a fellowship. I worked in Washington, D.C. and New York City on a fellowship. And then I even ended up in New Zealand on a Fulbright fellowship to do policy research there, which then led into my PhD. So I was on a trajectory just to be in policy and an academic. And then I started ProFellow kind of really as a side passion project. I did do some startup events very early in the journey, but the site didn't really have a business model. It was really more of a passion project for the first 5 years. But at some point in 2016, I decided to go full in on it. I left my last full-time policy job to start working on ProFellow full time. There's a bit of a story about that in my book, and that's where I would say my entrepreneurial journey really did begin. And so then I got to learn about this whole new industry of business and startups with literally no business experience. So, I'm very much a believer in self-teaching and learning through resources. And I was one of those people that fully took advantage of the resources available at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center when I was living in San Francisco. Now, I mentioned I have this media platform. It's really the first and foremost mission of it was to help make opportunities more accessible. I found in my career, I thought that fellowships were very word of mouth. They were very gate kept. They were not, I would say, easily discoverable by people who weren't tapped for them. And so the first problem I wanted to solve was to make these opportunities more accessible because they were extraordinary. Funding to go abroad, funding to do research, funding to go to graduate school. But the next step then was helping people get into these opportunities. How do you crack the code on what selection committees are looking for? And this code was similar to the code to get into these top graduate schools, even to win dream jobs or get into business accelerators. In all of these cases, you had to pitch your story. Who are you? What are your goals? Why should you be selected? And so I had a particular framework of how I approached this over the course of my career. It's a longer story, but I always felt like I was a bit of an underdog candidate in most of the competitions I went into. People would always tell me, "Oh, Vicki, that's out of reach," including when I started my business, don't leave your policy career to be an entrepreneur. This is crazy. I ignored that and I really focused in on being the most prepared applicant in the competition. Then I started to test this with other people, the approach that I'm going to teach you today. And I found that it worked for people of all different backgrounds, disciplines, experiences, ages. It didn't matter. And so these are just some of the people that I've worked with who have gotten into very competitive programs when they originally thought that they didn't have a chance. So this is a tested approach. This is not just theory or just work for me. So I love to share this approach because the more people who know about this, the better the ability we have to reduce these invisible barriers to getting into competitive opportunities. Now, I found that at the core of all of this is this question, why you? Anytime that you're up for a job, a business accelerator, any kind of a lead opportunity, a fellowship, even asking for a promotion or to be part of a speaking engagement, there's this question, why you? because there's always tens, if not thousands, of other candidates that the selection committee could choose from. And I always had a little bit of discomfort with this question because I realized, gee, like no one's ever taught me how to answer this question. Not in grade school, not in college, not even in the professional workforce. So I really struggled with this, but I did a lot of experimentation. I wasn't always successful in answering this question effectively or getting selected, but over time, I had the courage to keep trying, to keep experimenting, and to really hone in on what is it that selection committees are really looking for. And as I became more experienced in my approach, I realized I was doing something a little bit different than most other candidates. So I want to bring it back. This is Vicki, age 30. There I am. I think I spent a little too much time at the tanning salon back in those days. But I was in my policy career, and I want to start with this example of applying to my dream job because I know many of you are entrepreneurs. Maybe you're thinking about business accelerators and investors, but I think there's might be a range of people here. And I know one thing I think most of us can relate to is applying for jobs, right? You've got an opportunity, an internship, a job, whether you're in your early career, mid-career, late career, and you have to go up and convince them why should you be selected among thousands of other job candidates. And this question is especially difficult right now because the job market is very difficult. Maybe a lot of you have entered entrepreneurship because of the difficult job market. But I want to use this example to start. Now, when I was 30 years old, I was working in Washington, D.C. I had worked in the field of emergency management for about 8 years, done some fellowships, I did a couple of things. And actually, my career started in 9/11. I worked for the New York City Office of Emergency Management just before and in the year following 9/11. So this is a field that I was deeply involved in and working in. And so one day I was actually in a contract position at HHS, the federal department, and a colleague brought a job opening to me. And she said, Vicki, you should apply for this. And I said, what's this? It was a policy director position for the National Commission on Children and Disasters. And this national commission was very unique. It's quite rare because it was a commission that was created by Congress, and they really don't make these anymore. What Congress does is they set aside a pot of money and they select 10 expert commissioners from all over the country from different fields. And the goal of this commission was to put together a package of policy recommendations for Congress and President Obama on how to improve the preparedness, response, and recovery for children. And the policy director role was a really unique leadership role because the executive director was sort of the operational function. The second in command was the policy director, and this person was responsible for the execution of the report, the analysis, the incorporation of the commissioner's input. So I looked at this job role and I thought, oh my gosh, this is fully aligned with what I want to do. Fascinating. I get to meet all sorts of high-level people. I love problem solving. I love research and writing. I'm a big people person. This is my dream job. So thanks to this referral, I was able to get my resume directly to the executive director, which landed me an interview, which I was very excited about. But then I heard through the grapevine that there was many other people who were way more qualified than I was for this job that were also getting interviews. There was people with 10 to 20 years more work experience. There were people with doctorates because I didn't have my doctorate yet. There was one person who was a former executive director of a well-known DC nonprofit. So then I started to experience very severe self-doubt because I thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to beat out these other candidates. And maybe this interview is just a favor to our mutual contact who knew the executive director. So I was a little bit stumped before this first interview. Like, what am I going to tell them? What's my pitch? How would I convince them? I'm sitting there just trying to figure out how do I position myself. And I had to go deep into my store of knowledge about how I won, these competitive fellowships. In those cases, I was also up against people who had more credentials, more experience, even potentially more connections, and I was able to edge out other candidates because of an approach. But I just want you to think of yourself, if you've been in a competition like this of your career, where you were up against people who were potentially more qualified, better resumes, and you thought to yourself, how do I position myself? Now, we're going to stop here for a minute. I want you, since many of you are entrepreneurs, I also want you to think to yourself, Let's imagine the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center is offering a $50,000 grant, unrestricted, to one business. How would you answer the question, why you? If you can put into the chat, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, now this is imaginary, but maybe we can manifest this, right, Colin? Maybe we can manifest this amazing unrestricted 50K grant to one business through a competition. I want to know, thinking about if you were in this position, as if many of you are business owners, how would you answer the question, why you? Put some ideas into the chat. I'm just curious. And I'm just curious what people will say. Oh, one person said 9/11 is your birthday. I don't know if you mean 2001 9/11 because that makes me feel quite old, but great call it. Um, okay, so James says growing my company will return more than a 500,000 return. I don't know if you mean dollars, but that's good. Okay, I will multiply my results by 4 in year 1. Okay. All right. These are kind of you're thinking about the outcomes. That's good. Umit says, because I can turn 50K into 5 billion that delivers value that is beneficial to society in so many ways. Okay, excellent. Any other ideas? All right, Carol says this grant would accelerate the ability to serve more leaders, uplift more organizations, bring high quality development opportunities to communities that often lack access to them. It would also provide essential support to the founder, reducing financial barriers, enabling the pursuit of the mission. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a little long, but that's great. Jeremy says, I will be able to hire others. Okay, create economic impact. Someone says this will help me scale 30%, allow me to make an impact in the industries and organizations. Excellent, because I'm solving a real urgent problem. Awesome. Okay, so these are excellent. So most of you, actually, this is good. You're focusing on the outcome. If I get this 50K, here's what the result is going to be for my business. All right. Help me hire. Excellent. Okay. So I find most of you, I would say the general theme is outcomes, right? I can take this grant. This will help me accelerate maybe something I'm already doing. It's going to make a greater impact for my mission, for my organization. All right. Hold that thought. Now, I want to take you back to 30-year-old Vicki. So, like I said, I was thinking like, okay, how do I go about this job application? And I realized most of my life I've been taught that to win an opportunity, I need to build my resume. I need to show them that I have more accomplishments than everyone else. I've got more skills, more talents, better ideas, whatever that may be, right? I have to really outshine the competition. But then, how do I do that when I'm up against people that have more accomplishments, better resumes, better whatever? And so, what I decided to do was hone in on the mission of the commission itself. I went and did my research over the weekend because my interview was on a Monday. I spent the entire weekend researching why the commission was created. It was created due to Hurricane Katrina, which had a really bad federal response. So I kind of was researching all the issues with Katrina, what prompted this commission and this investment. I looked at the people involved. I looked at who they were selecting as commissioners. I thought about, what would success look like if we were to get to this 2 year commitment to have this, great body of work, these policy recommendations. And I decided that instead of coming in and trying to convince them that I'm the smartest or the best or, anything like that, I was just going to come into this interview with my 2 year strategic plan. So I wrote a 5-page strategic plan with clear bullets and outline of what exactly I would do over 2 years to lead this group toward a high quality, successful body of recommendations for Congress and President Obama. I talked about the primary issues that we would cover. I talked about all of the stakeholder groups in Washington, D.C. that we should access who already had policy recommendations in discrete areas. I talked about events and conferences that we should be involved in. I talked about, particular experts that we should access. And I even talked a little bit about some of the potential roadblocks in terms of the cost of doing certain things or, the policy roadblocks that would come up in terms of actually implementing the work. I brought that to my interview. And you know what happened? We spent the entire interview talking about the plan. He barely looked at my resume. He didn't, I look, like I look quite young. I mean, I was 30 and, I was thinking to myself, man, they're going to immediately notice that I'm young and they're going to immediately notice that I don't have as much work experience. But they were so impressed by the plan, it was all we talked about. So it made an impression. They kept bringing me in, bringing me in, bringing me in until finally I landed the job. That's me on C-SPAN. I don't even know C-SPAN even exists anymore. But I got this job. And then when I asked the director later, I said, why did you pick me over all these super qualified people? All he said to me was, Vicki, you made a convincing case. So the convincing case wasn't the resume. It wasn't how many skills do I have? How many years of experience do I have? How many degrees do I have? I may have been the only person that walked into those interviews with a specific plan that really hooked in their mind. I mean, they knew exactly what they were going to get if they got me. And the thing is, the plan may not have been perfect. I mean, we certainly did different things, but that was the thing that landed me the job. And that is also how I landed fellowships. I got into college against the odds. I got into graduate schools. I've gotten leadership opportunities. I got into the Nasdaq program. I got a book deal. I've always used this approach of developing that future vision. So, what I realized is that the story of your future is more important than the story of your past. When you're talking to selectors, we're always taught to talk about our past, our accomplishments, our skills, our talent. It doesn't matter. They want to know about the future because in almost all cases, these opportunities are investments in something that's going to happen in the future, not what you've done in the past. They're not awards for that. So it's important that to really work on that future vision before you go before a selection committee and get really detailed so they can understand exactly what it is that they're going to get if they invest in you. So, this is a little bit turns it on the head of what we're taught as we're growing up. And through this work, I developed what I call the winning application story. This is a very, very, very simple framework for answering that question, why you, no matter what type of competition it is. So just like a story in a novel or a movie, there is three parts to the story: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Now, the beginning is where you are today. The middle, there's a hook, and then there's an end. So let me go over these three parts one by one. So first, the story beginning, this is where you are right now. So in the case of a business accelerator or the 50K grant, you might talk about some of your key milestones that relate to the opportunity. So there might be a couple of career milestones or business milestones, just depending on where you are. But what's important to know is that you should emphasize the motivations behind your decisions, the why of your choices. Why did you start that business? Why have you spent X number of years in this particular industry? And also in the case of jobs and other things, why did you major in that in college? Because while your accomplishments are there, the selectors really care about your intrinsic motivation to solve problems experienced by other people. Because your intrinsic motivation to solve problems experienced by other people, when that's aligned with their mission to solve problems experienced by other people, there's a full alignment there. So they will know that if you're motivated to achieve the mission, you will be a satisfied, productive, trusted member of the team, even when the organization faces challenges. So what they're looking for when they hear about your background is they want to know, why did you do all those things? Not just what did you do? But oftentimes we miss out, really emphasizing our motivations, what drives us, what kind of social impact we want to make. Sometimes those things are outside our professional work, volunteer work that you're doing, or even, family and personal goals. So emphasize your motivation so that they know that you are an intrinsically motivated person to to solve problems experienced by other people. Now, when you're doing a little pitch, usually then next, you're actually going to go to the end of the story. And I said the end of the story is post opportunity because you're going to get an opportunity, but what they really care about is what happens even beyond that. So if you think about a business accelerator or any kind of pitch to a business investor, it's not just what you're going to immediately do with the money that you get. It's really what's going to happen in the next 2, 5, 10 years with your business. So you have to paint that vision. And I think as entrepreneurs, we're taught this, with business pitching to show that really highly specific outcome, a vision. But what's most motivational is how that vision impacts other people, not you personally. Now, you might have a personal ambition to be wealthy, to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, to get awards, to, do this or that, but that isn't what motivates selectors. They want to know, how is this business that you've created going to make the world a better place? How's it going to solve problems that people care about? And so they're going to invest in things that they are also interested in as a mission, a social impact mission. So the goal that you talk about, the vision, has to not just be your personal ambition, it should be your personal mission for impact, and it should be aligned with their mission for social impact. And when those are aligned, it's a very, very powerful story end, right? So, and the more detailed it is, the better. I talk in my book deeply about how important it is to have detail because that's what makes it memorable. It shows, it helps hook in their mind, what it is that you're going to achieve. And oftentimes we're pretty fuzzy on the details, right? We're sort of like brushing over them, like, well, this big thing will happen, but we're fuzzy on the details. The details are super important. And you can't create the details without doing the background research on the funding body, on the employer, and what they're trying to achieve themselves. So think about, that's the end of the story goal. You've painted this incredible vision, just like I did with my strategic plan. And then the middle story hook is where I do something a little different. So for the story hook, you might have heard people talk about the hero's journey as a storyline and pitches and essays and other things where you're talking about why you. However, often people make the mistake of making themselves the hero of the story. So they'll go into a job interview and they talk to the employer about how you're going to come in and solve all their problems, make everything better, right? That is a different hook than I use. I actually talk about their unique benefits. So my story hook and my approach is to detail 2 to 3 of the organization's unique benefits that you will capitalize on using your talents to achieve that goal, that vision that you just outlined, so that without the opportunity, the goal may not be achieved. Now, the reason you want to hone in on their unique benefits is that you're going to be leveraging those benefits to achieve the outcome. So you're the guide in the story, not the hero. They're the hero. So when you're thinking about, this imaginary situation, for example, the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center having a 50K grant, I'm wondering how many of you thought about how would you leverage the center's resource for the vision that you're saying? Most of you said, I'm going to increase my business, achieve my mission. I didn't I didn't look at all the chats, but I didn't really see any of you say how you're going to leverage the center's unique networks, resources, people, and funding to achieve the goal. This is the little switch I want people to make. Think about that. How are you going to use that to leverage it? Because what it is a collaboration. It's not a you are the hero and you're going to do this outcome. It's really a collaboration of two groups, you and them, together achieving a mutually beneficial outcome, right? So it's also important to know, what is the Nasdaq Center's, what is their mission? What are their goals as an organization? So that is what I call the winning application story. And it's a little different than what we're typically taught. Beginning you today, the middle hook, and that future end goal. So remember, they're the hero, not you. Find those 2 to 3 unique benefits. Now, this is why it works so well and why it's better than coming in with a resume full of stuff, telling them how you're going to achieve your personal ambitions or your business's goals or other things. Number one, they have a mission. Even the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center has a mission, a social impact mission that goes beyond just helping individual entrepreneurs build better businesses. There's kind of a broader mission. So dig into that. I'm sure Colin knows it like the back of his hand, so he can tell us about that. But the beauty of number one, creating that really future vision, the mutually beneficial one, is that it helps selectors connect the dots. If you think about it, many people go into job interviews, talking about, I did this, I did that, here's my skills, here's my degrees. However, no matter how good that list is, they still have to map how your skills and talents are going to help them achieve the goals and outcomes that they're working on, right? So rather than having them try to figure out in their brain, okay, this person's this, but how does it map to that compared to this other person? Just tell them, give them the vision map. That will get them excited too, because what you visualize as, in terms of impact is something that they may not have thought of before because they've never met you. So it helps connect the dots, making you a much more memorable and compelling candidate. Secondly, you can't create the vision without doing research. You just can't. You can't look at a job description and come up with it. You can't look at a grant and come up with it. You have to go and figure out what is this organization's mission for social impact? What are their goals in the next 12 months? And what other kind of subsidiary goals do they have? Maybe it's like developing a better workplace culture or revitalizing the community that the organization is based in, these kind of sub goals as well. If you do your research, all of these things can be incorporated into the vision. And it shows them that you know their mission, you researched their goals, and you took the time to come up with a vision that would excite them. So that's super important. And then finally, that detailed vision that you worked on, for leading up into the interview, that shows your enthusiasm for the role. And it also allows you to show them rather than tell them how enthusiastic you are, and also show them your skills. So rather than just saying, I have these skills and I am so enthusiastic about this job, your vision map shows it to them, which is way more powerful. It's basically showing your skills and talents in real time. And some people ask me, well, how do I apply for something that I don't meet all the qualifications? Like, how do I do that? And I said, you fill it in with enthusiasm. I will tell you that when you have an authentic desire for a particular opportunity, that is the ultimate edge over other highly qualified candidates. There's always going to be candidates applying to things for superficial reasons. Oh, I threw my resume in that. Oh, I think I'm a shoo-in. That's fine. I'm going to do this. Or even just I'm unemployed and, I'm just throwing my resume out to 100 things. You're always going to be up against people with superficial reasons. They are not going to be strong candidates. The strongest candidates are the people that have the deepest enthusiasm for the opportunity. And I know this myself because I would always pick hunger and enthusiasm over skills. I would rather train on skills than pick someone who's kind of like, isn't really interested in my mission, isn't interested in my particular goals, or doesn't know what they are. So fill it in with that. And this is how you show them your enthusiasm. This is why it's so powerful, because all of these competitions are a conversation. It's a dynamic process. It's not a numbers game. So virtually anyone can stand out in these competitions, no matter what's on your resume, when you do the research and show them how enthusiastic and how visionary you are. And when I've done this so many times, it's like people are like, "Oh man, she is prepared," or they'll say, I can't even say, "No one has such a specific plan. Nobody came in with that," or they'll say, "I've never seen such passion," or "Why didn't we think of that?" Right? It like impresses them to no end. And this is how I've been able to beat out people with a lot more experience and skills than I have. So there's a couple of mistakes to avoid in all of this. All right. Number one, one thing I see a lot, especially in younger people, is they think of selectors for jobs and schools and other things as judges. Because of social media, which I didn't have when I was younger, but because of social media, we have a very deep, pervasive comparison culture. So we can see all of the other people who are applying to the same things that we are. We can see their resumes. We come to all sorts of conclusions about why they were picked and we were not. Oh, they went to a better school than me. They had better grades than me. They have more connections than I do. And we come to all these conclusions. The fact of the matter is, we don't really know why someone was picked over us. We weren't there in the interview. We didn't hear them give their pitch. So we start to think it's like this judgment. If a selector rejects me, it means I'm not good enough. If a selector doesn't pick you, it's probably because you didn't give them what they need. You were missing something in your pitch. You didn't do enough research. You didn't create a detailed vision. And even when you do the work, your vision that you create may not actually be what they're looking for. So this is no guarantee. But we need to stop thinking of selectors as judges who are deciding if we're good or not good. We should think of them as future collaborators. So if you want to collaborate with someone, you have to give them what they need. Like you have something to bring to the table. They're bringing their stuff, you're bringing yours. So that together you decide, yes, let's work together on this. Also, it kind of puts you on a more even playing field. It's not this big hierarchy of them versus me, and maybe if I'm lucky, they'll pick me. Think of them as collaborators, future friends, people that you want to work with. And if you think of them that way, you won't feel so resentful and upset if you don't get selected for something. You'll just move on. Okay, I'll look for the next opportunity to achieve my mission for my work. Okay, so think of it that way as your first go. Secondly, the second mistake is expressing self-centered goals. Now, this is no jag against anybody who made a comment in the chat, but most of you did put in mostly self-centric goals for your business as part of your pitch, right? My business will 5x my revenue. I will have a greater impact for my business. I didn't I didn't see the full chat, but I didn't see anyone say we're going to help the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center further their mission by working together. So this is the little switch you need to make, right? Think about what is their mission, the funder's mission, because self-centric goals, that's not why they're creating these investments. They're creating investments for themselves, right, to achieve their goals. So you have to know what those goals are. So, and the other thing is too, no one cares about your desire to make more money, to have a certain title, to get prestige. No one will care about that more than you. You want to have a personal mission to solve a problem experienced by other people. Now that is what inspires people. Like when people see, oh wow, they're solving this problem that we've been grappling with for years or decades. That is what gets investors and selectors excited. So think about what mission you're achieving. And then, of course, mistake number three, I already mentioned this. Don't make yourself the hero of the story. I want you to think about them as the hero. They're the hero and you're the guide. So if you think of the hero's journey, a hero, there's somebody he or she has a problem, they got to go on a treacherous journey to reach this goal. And along the way, there's a guide, the Yoda, the person that's going to help you change the game. So if you think of them as the hero, think of yourself as the guide. You know that the hero, them, have particular resources, assets, but they're missing the guide to get to the goal. So think of yourself as the guide, the Yoda, not the Luke Skywalker. It'll totally change how you do your pitch. So that's the full winning application story. Now, I have a lot more to tell everyone about this. There's more in depth because the creation of the story is a unique skill that I've worked on over many, many years. I didn't even know that I was doing this when I started early on. When I was young, the reason I kind of figured this out is number one, I had two skills that I learned from my parents. Number one, my dad is a Lutheran minister, so he's a storyteller. I mean, he gets up and he tells sermons, and he was a very experienced writer and speaker. And so I knew that storytelling is incredibly compelling when you're making human connections. And then my mother, she was kind of a amateur interior designer, but she was very, very good at making things beautiful, right? She was a host. Our house was always perfectly organized. And I realized that attention to detail is a great way to get people's attention. Think about a fancy restaurant that you went to or a night or your favorite wedding that you ever attended. The thing that you really appreciated were the little details, the curated details, and the effort that went into those details. So those two things really influenced me early in my life, which is how I cracked this code on an application story that works in almost any situation. But I also created a formula. I have a much longer formula called the Match Me formula on how to make this story really, really good, and not just any story. So I'll tell you about the story that is kind of in my book. I'll talk about that at the end, but I want you to think about this now. Write your story pitch for the imaginary Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center 50K grant. So I want you to think about the story beginning, where you are now, your business skills, your motivations for your business. Think about the story end, the detailed vision of impact that you're going to make, and then the story hook. 2 to 3 unique things about the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center that you would leverage to achieve the goal that benefits both your business and benefits the center. If anybody wants to put that pitch in the chat, I mean, who knows? Maybe Colin has 50K lying around and he can just give it out. But, just taking it in a different direction. Like, think about that. Think about the center. I don't know. I'm sure, Colin, you can tell us at the end, like what you believe, Colin, are the 2 to 3 unique benefits. Now, here's the thing. When you're talking, when you're applying to things, there's so many opportunities to do your research. So don't just look at websites. Don't look at a static website, which frankly is usually months out of date. Look at news stories, recent news releases, look at events, look at Nicola's going, she's doing talks and conferences. What is she talking about when she's representing the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center? Think about how the mission of the center has changed over a couple of years. It's kind of morphed and changed in different ways. Who is the center trying to support? Why are they trying to support that group? And what is the ultimate goal? That's going to take a little bit of research if it's not super clear on the website. So think about how you're getting that 50K grant will help them achieve their goal and yours. All right, let me get to the end. I always say the prepared will succeed. Now, this is not a shortcut approach. And I'm one of those people, I'm so sick of everything these days has to be a shortcut, a hack, a productivity thing. Listen, guys, you really want to do the most exceptional things in your career. All of it takes time and effort. Nothing has changed, even with AI, even with everything else. It takes time to build human relationships. It takes time to understand, missions and goals. You can use some of these tools, but I always say the prepared will succeed because I always found that it was better to apply to a few things that I deeply, authentically desired and would go really deep, all in on the application, than to superficially apply to tons of things and, just be one of those thousands that just put an application out there. Because really, if you know now how I approach the competition, every single time you apply for something, I want you to imagine that you're up against a Vicki Johnson, right? Who's doing all the research, who's going the extra mile. And then think about how would I compete against Vicki, who's doing this? Because you can, you want to be that top 5% of applicants that are going the extra mile for the things that you really, really want. We can't always do this. It's not always possible, but if there's something you have your eye on, go all in and don't worry about unrewarded effort because what I'll tell you is that even when you don't get something, when you go all in and go that extra mile, everyone involved will see you in the best way possible. The people that refer you, the people that are on the selection committee, you will build a reputation for being an extremely hard worker. And that's how you get tapped for opportunities that come through word of mouth. That's how I got tapped to even apply to that policy director position because this other woman saw that I was somebody with a very strong reputation for, the commitment that I was putting into my work. So don't forget, it's never unrewarded the effort when you don't get it. So don't worry about the effort, just worried about going all in. All right, this is my book, Pitch Your Potential. I've got a copy here. And I want to say a humongous thank you to Nicola, who actually endorsed the book. Her quotes on the back. She said, I've seen thousands of founders and world-class storytellers through my work as an investor and in our competitive milestone makers program, and Vicki's process is second to none. Thank you, Nicola. It was so cool to have her endorse the book. She knows me. She's seen me in action even when I came to the Nasdaq Milestone Makers info session in San Francisco. This is back in 2018. And I actually brought my 4-month-old daughter in the Bjorn into this meeting. I thought like I would sneak in the back, and I didn't realize it was going to be in a tiny conference room. Colin, I don't know if you were there when I was there, but Nicola was there. And I just remember I could have called in. I could have called in and did the virtual thing. Tons of people did. But I thought, you know what? Now I'm going to throw the baby in the Bjorn, and I'm going to head down on the bus, and I'm going to go in person so they can meet me, connect with me, see my face, see my name, so that when my application comes through, they're going to remember me. And that's exactly what happened. Of course, I did all the other things too. Get my book. My book is going to tell you about the Match Me formula that explains the 7 elements of a winning application. It shows you how to make your applications memorable, aligned with the mission, timely, highly specific, capitalizing on their unique benefits, and elegant, which is the tone of self-confidence and humility. All right, let's see. That's it. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'd love to hear just what you guys thought, if it changed your mind frame at all.
Awesome. Vicky, I'd love to hear all of this. This is such great
Pull
stuff.
this
And have
back
you
up if that's
seen?
okay.
All good. You put that up in a minute, but we'll jump into Q&A in a second. But yeah, everyone's saying, love this, so true. Thank you. Thank you for saying this. The
Oh,
presentation was
thank you
amazing.
guys.
So great job. And yes, many of these things that you did in your framework did help you get into milestone
It did.
makers. And I was there.
I didn't know if it would work, but it did.
I was there in the deal room when you came with your little one. And
You
yeah,
were?
all
You
this
were
is,
there? I couldn't remember. I was so nervous.
yeah, I was probably taking notes very quietly.
All of, and I was also some like I was a bit older than the crowd too, and I could just like all these like young people were like, "What? Why is she here with the baby?" But luckily, Liv, my daughter Liv, who's now 8 years old, she was very well behaved. So thank God.
Yeah. Oh, well, back to the full circle moment. Maybe she'll apply for milestone makers with your winning formula
Maybe
one
she
day.
will. That would be awesome.
Love that. Awesome. Well, we got some questions, and so I'm just gonna roll down the line.
Okay.
Question from Lysandra. How long should your pitch be?
Oh, that completely depends on the situation. Now, when I talk about a pitch can come in many different formats. When your first pitch to an employer when you're applying for a job is your cover letter. You also are kind of pitching in interviews, you're pitching in pitch decks, you're pitching when you're having conversations with investors, you're constantly pitching. So it just depends on, the situation. But what I want everyone to do is create a little application story outline that's unique to each thing that you're applying to before and use that as your centering philosophy when you go into the pitch, whatever format it is.
Yeah. Yeah, because most of them like will give you like a frame of like 90
It could be an
seconds to
essay, it could be
10 minutes.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Amazing. Keep these questions coming. Um, how do you avoid people thinking you're too advanced or overqualified while still presenting strongly?
Oh, I get this question a lot because I work with a lot of people who are changing careers or trying to figure out how to move from one industry to a completely different one. Honestly, it's the alignment with the mission. I think I mentioned earlier that enthusiasm, honestly, matters more to any type of selector than skills or experience. So, what's really important is that you deeply understand the mission of the selecting body and then you talk about that mission and why do you care and then use those motivating signals like, well, why are you motivated to move from corporate to nonprofit or work in this particular area or you're going to have general skills, you're going to say this could apply here, but what they want to know is why do you care, why are you making this move? So motivations, enthusiasm, and that research on their mission, the alignment is the most important.
That's super good advice. Another one, does the match me formula make sense for only bigger opportunities, or can it be used or
Oh,
adapted for regular
Oh,
appeal for
guys, I
everyday
used it.
prospects?
I used it, I don't know if people can do this anymore, but when we bought our house back in 2020, you could write a letter to the owner to convince them, I was using the Match Me formula. I've used the Match Me formula for, oh, pretty much anything. Frankly, gosh, you could probably use it in dating. You could probably use it in, I don't know. I mean, it's really just thinking more about the selecting body and thinking about what do they need? What are they trying to achieve? And then like showing them how you're going to further their mission, not just your personal goals. It works in situations from very small to huge.
Love that. Another question here. Do you have advice to or how to present physically in an interview? Like, are you super confident? Are you humble?
Well, you know what? I still get nervous going into certain things. You know what it is when you do that in-depth research before the interview with that mission statement. Number one, it does a few things. It builds your self-confidence. Like the more research you do and the more prepared you are with this detailed vision, the more you'll just naturally be more confident. You'll be excited to share that vision. So even if you're nervous, or feeling like, oh, you're coming in with a plan. You're coming in with this is the vision. So it is also a self-confidence boosting exercise. It's not just a tactical exercise. So in terms of that, like I said, it doesn't matter what you're wearing. It doesn't matter, anything. But if you come in showing that you know their mission and goals really well, and you have ideas on how to advance it, that just comes through the enthusiasm. That's what they're looking for. Obviously, be professional. Don't just roll up in jeans. The worst thing is the person with the great resume who thinks they're a shoo-in, doesn't prepare, rolls into the interview thinking they're going to get it no matter what because of all the prestigious stuff on their resume. That is actually the biggest turnoff for selectors is like you didn't even do anything to prep for this. You just thought you were going to get it. Ooh, don't do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
prepare for everything.
I hear that. Let's see. Another question. You gave an example at the top of the call of how you did all of this work and laid out a detailed plan, and that was why you were chosen. With that in mind, how do you balance this preparation with not giving it all away so
Mm.
that your ideas are not taken without hiring you?
You know, it's interesting. I was just at Cornell last week doing a similar talk, and someone asked, they came up to ask me this, like, aren't you worried that like someone would steal your ideas? You know, honestly, I had never thought about that, that they could take my plan, my strategic plan, and then not hire me. I guess I never worried about it too much because the fact of the matter is the plan involved my expertise and skills. So unless they have another Vicki Johnson hiding in the corner, frankly, I didn't think they could execute what I'm putting out there. I mean, maybe they could try, but they wouldn't be very successful. That said, be careful. I know a lot of companies make you do work as part of interviews, and that's kind of taboo. They shouldn't really be making you like do projects that they are then going to incorporate into their revenue plans and things like that. So if you're working with recruit, you can push back against that a little bit. There is some unethical practices in that regard in terms of like
Hmm.
interview practices and making people do work. And in terms, so just keep in mind that too. But the balance. So like I said, over the years, I wasn't the person applying to 100 things in a week. I just honed in on a couple of things that were super aligned with my mission that I was really excited about and then went deep on that. And frankly, yes, I did have to clear my calendar. I did have to prioritize this and not go out with friends on the weekend and not to make this happen. So it is a matter of being the most prepared. And yeah, it was disappointing if I didn't get something, but at the same time, like I said, I know I made an impression because in the second half of my career up until this point, I started getting tapped for things.
Hmm.
So it paid off.
Yes, it did. All right, let's see. First off, great presentation, Vicky.
Thank
How
you.
did you overcome the feelings of being an underdog while navigating highly credentialed people with degrees and networks? What was
Yes.
the aha moment that gave you confidence and passion?
Well, so keep in mind, this approach that I've just taught you, I honed this over many, many, many years. So when I talk about my book, the first time I really had to do this was applying to college. I was going to an inner city public high school in Wilmington, Delaware, that was like very challenged. It was closed 2 years after I graduated, and I was like a top student. I wanted to go to an Ivy League school. Everyone told me like, Vicky, like you don't really have a chance. Like you're coming from a very a school that isn't competitive in this way. There's no students from my school that went to Ivy League schools. So, I had to really lean into it's a longer story. You got to read the book, but I had a feeling I went to Cornell. I got into Cornell with a big financial aid package, and I had this intuition that I was meant to be there. To call it, other people call it naive optimism. I call it intuition. I listened to my intuition and I leaned deep on it. And I think I'm not I don't feel myself as emotionally impacted by rejection. I think because I've always had a clear personal mission to create social impact. So while the comparison culture makes us very like, how many, I've got to be prestigious and I've got to make other people think I'm successful. But my mind has always been focused on how do I make the world a better place? I really want to solve problems. That is what gets me out of bed in the morning, not like what fancy degree I have on my resume. And the reason I wanted to go to an Ivy League school was because I thought it would open doors, and it did. It really did. But I mean, I had to believe that I was destined to make a social impact, and that to me has been a very centering force in my life always. So I never felt emotionally impacted by rejection and all this stuff because I felt like, well, if not this, then the next thing. I got to keep pushing, figuring out what I'm going to do to make the impact that I want to make in the world. So try that.
Yeah, I love it.
That feeling. Yeah,
And I've heard so many times, sometimes when there's not a fit on both sides of the table, it might be better in the long run anyways, right?
exactly. It's not when you're not picked for something, it's not because you're not good enough or you're not, it's or not worthy. It's really just because it's again, you're pitching a collaboration and it's not the right collaboration. So move on to the next thing. But I'm telling you, just put in the effort because people will notice it, and then things start coming later in your career that you didn't imagine. You start getting tapped for things. I was tapped for my PhD. I never thought I'd do a PhD. This professor saw me striving and doing all this work, and he said, Vicki, you should apply for the PhD program. That you would be, what you're working on is very aligned with my research. And his vote of confidence is what got me into a competitive PhD program with full funding. So I didn't expect that to ever be tapped for something like that. Um, I have a similar story with the book deal, but we won't go there. So same thing.
Yeah, love
Work
that.
hard.
Yeah. And hopefully you enjoy what you're doing too, like you do. Let's see. We're almost at time, but I want to get to a couple more of these questions if we can. How can I overcome my mental block when presenting for a grant? Nobody likes insurance, so how can I frame it for them to take me seriously? Well, I hope you like insurance, Cynthia. I'm sure
Wait,
you
you
do.
mean it's insurance what your startup is working on,
I think
or
so. Yeah.
no one likes insurance? Well, we need insurance. Insurance does solve a problem experienced by people. We need
Uh-huh.
insurance, even though the insurance industry is, frankly, we have thoughts about that. But we need insurance for health, for homes, for disasters. So think about how does what you're offering solve a problem experienced by other people, and why do you care about this problem so much? What's personally driving you, motivating you? That's how you get over the mental block. I want you to think about, if I could get these resources and these people and this funding, how is the world going to be exponentially better than it is right now? Like that, use that to drive you. And if people say no, you're going to get rejected so many times, especially in the business world. But someone is going to buy in if you have the enthusiasm. So you got to keep up the personal connection to the goal. This is why they always say to entrepreneurs, you should not work on problems that you don't really care about, because you will not last with it. Trust me. You want to make something that purely because you think it'll make money. You can try that, but you're probably at some point going to burn out because you're not intrinsically motivated. Like, it's just you need that intrinsic motivation to do things for a much longer time than another person would.
Yeah, that's
That's
why
how
we
I
say
think.
why your why matters.
Why it matters to you personally.
Yep. Vicky, well, what a pleasure it's been to learn so much more about how you got into this and so many other, our program and so many others. And so
Thank
hopefully everyone
you.
will take these tips and tools on their own journeys. But golden nugget, key takeaway moment. If somebody was going to dial into the last 2 minutes of this call, what's one thing you want them to take away today?
Just remember, you're not the hero, they're the hero. That's the one thing people always kind of turn around by accident. Always think about what are the 2 to 3 unique benefits that they offer that you're going to capitalize on with your talents to achieve the social impact goal. That will change everything, I promise, if you're not having success.
Awesome. Well, Vicky, thank you so much. And everyone, check out the book. But I
Get my
really appreciate
books.
you coming.
Find me on LinkedIn, and Colin, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're still at the center because you were there when I was there, and it's just really cool.
10 years, here we
I
go.
know.
Well, Vicky, thank you so much. And for everyone on the call still, thank you for joining us. We've got a bunch of cool stuff coming up on the horizon, so keep a lookout for that. But Vicky, looks like this is great. This is wonderful. This is
Woo,
gold.
excellent.
So
All right.
amazing. Great to see you again. Good luck on the book tour. And
Thank you
we
so
look
much.
forward to staying in touch and to seeing everyone else online soon.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Bye. Oh, Colin, are you still there?